And I have trouble finding one that works no matter what.
Theirs work pretty good.
I see,
They don't take much abuse because they write well.
that's
Well, is it, so, okay, I'll talk to you about it later. Hey, Ron. You're the young guy. Hey, Ron. Would you open this for Nancy? I can't do it either. See, you just had a young, strong one.
All that, but thank you.
Yeah, I sure couldn't do it.
A little bit of a crowd.
Yeah, I'm surprised with the rain. Are we on?
Yes.
Well, it's 6 o'clock, and I will call this meeting to order. Thank you all for coming out on this very wet, rainy night for planning and zoning. We appreciate your attendance, and we'll give you a chance to speak as the meeting goes on. Before we get to the adoption of the agenda, Ron, I have a question. What is the presentation A4 about? Is that the discussion that we're going to have later on, or is there something different?
What was the item number?
A4? It says presentation to commissioners.
Yes, so item A4 was our existing presentation that we've had on the agenda for quite some time. I'd like to, because of the amount of discussion items that we do have for tonight, I'd like to move that one to our next meeting. I do anticipate us being able to actually get to that presentation at the next meeting.
Okay.
But unfortunately, we had to get this presentation out of the way first.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't the discussion item.
Yes,
so-
sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
with that, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The agenda is adopted. And the first item under old business are the minutes of 4:18. Have the commissioners all had a chance to review those minutes and any changes or corrections needed?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved. Okay, first item, Ron, is RA 0722, the Artisan Crossing LLC.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the commission. Tonight, we were expecting to have an application on our agenda, as we do, for Artisan Crossing. I have been in touch with the attorney for this application. He was at the last meeting, as we recall, Mr. Joe Fowler. And he has requested for this application to be withdrawn. And being that we have quite a crowd tonight, we wanted to be able to advise everyone that we do not currently have any date for this to come back to on our agenda, or any interest to get back on any future agenda. The applicant has indicated that as of right now, they would like to withdraw their request, being that they have heard quite the amount of feedback at the last meeting, and they specifically cited that and the concerns that were voiced. And so they have decided to go ahead and withdraw.
So they're withdrawing Phase 5.
This would be Artisan Crossing. That's the item above that one. This
Oh,
is
I'm
the-
sorry, I'm
yeah.
sorry. Artisan Cross, yes. Sorry, looking at the wrong
All right,
thing.
yeah, I move we allow them to withdraw this and move on.
Well, before you make a motion, has there been any changes? I thought I saw the attorney walk in, but maybe not. There was some discussion about changing the connection with Rockmart Road.
Yes, sir, he is. I'm Joe Fowler, Douglasville. Thank you. Good to see you all tonight. Yes, sir, we're going back to the drawing board, working with the DOT about how to deal with that entrance. We understand the concerns that were expressed. Right now, we're just pulling it off the table to see what we can possibly do. We know the big problem is getting out from the subdivision and turning left. And we're talking about the possibility of doing roundabout, maybe a 4-letter word here. But interestingly, for those in the neighborhood, turning right and going a short distance and having a modified roundabout there so you can then come out and come to the full roundabout. But that's not been completed yet. The engineers are looking at it. The concerns of the neighborhood are on the first of the minds of the developer, excuse me. We hope to have a decision and refile the application relatively soon. The reason we didn't just continue it is because we were going to have to ask you to postpone it again. We recognize it's going to have to be re-advertised. The neighbors would be notified of everything. So that's the goal. It's to try to still do the project, but to do it in a way that has a reduced impact on the neighbors. So that's the rationale. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Ron.
very good. Thank you very
Hello,
much.
Joe,
Appreciate it.
we got to stop meeting like this.
Well, last time you didn't buy dinner. I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to make any difference.
All right.
Mr. Lang, did you have your hand? Yes.
I just want to make
Oh.
sure, so for now, the application, it's not the table or anything, it would be null and void for now.
Right.
And then they would start over, all over again.
Yeah.
And one question for the attorney, please, real quick. The intent is to, as you said, to still go ahead with convenience store and pumps. I know at one time wasn't there some conversation on this property about maybe selling it or having some strip mall or other commercial businesses taking that property? Is that still a possibility?
The plan initially was for a convenience store with gas pumps and only that. And the plan that you saw that we have now withdrawn had 3 separate commercial interests: fast food, convenience store, and a car wash. We've withdrawn all that. We intend to come back at some point in the future, but not until we get the issue about Rockmart Road resolved. I took to them your suggestion about doing interconnectivity between any of the employees there who drive private vehicles so that they could get gas at that location rather than going around and getting back on either Industrial Access or Rockmart Road. They're looking at that as well.
Okay, but just for the record, that was for trucks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
John,
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Mims has got something.
Yeah, I have a question. Initially, when we were first doing this, I think it's a great idea to have it because it would keep those trucks from coming more into our area. However, when I'm looking at the conditions, and on here, the staff says "or." And when I see the word "or," I want to know exactly what's going on. And it says that you're going to submit a traffic study. It seems to me that we have had a lot of traffic studies in that particular area. And who pays for this? And is this identical or is it another one? Because yes, after going up there several times and looking at it, I do realize that you do need to have some kind of entranceway that's safe and not going to be doing that. But that was my question about the traffic study. Are you going to do another one? Will it be the same one? And haven't we done some before that are in that similar area?
Chairman, if I
Yes.
can, I'd like to interject. We're getting really close to public hearing at this point. So because this applicant has requested to withdraw, we need to allow them to withdraw. We
agree.
cannot have testimony on the record.
I agree. I agree. Do we need a motion for that or not?
Yes, sir. A motion's just to withdraw.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to withdraw.
Yeah, I did a while ago, you know.
Well,
Second.
My motion to withdraw.
All right. All in favor? Okay. All right. Next item is ALT 0123 Liberty Point. Ron?
Thank you, Chairman. ALT-01-23 Liberty Point is a request to alter the existing plan unit development for Liberty Point and adopt a revised concept plan. If you recall from our last meeting, there was a request to continue carrying of any testimony onto this meeting. If you recall, the Liberty Point subdivision and plan unit development was originally developed back in 2006. It's gone through a number of changes and iterations along the way. We have gotten to the point of the fifth phase, where the applicant is looking to have the plat for the fifth phase to be approved. And this was sometime in early 2022, where the city did stop the approval of the plat in order to ensure that the concept plan that they are working off of, that was passed in 2006, which is the legal concept plan for this plan unit development, as we require for all plan unit developments in the city, and as required by law. The concept plan was not being followed in several phases. And so the staff was confronted with with really not much of a choice, but confronted with the choice of essentially continuing on with errors from the past that are not grounded with any sort of approvals from this body or the city council, or we can go back and we can get an adopted concept plan that is in line with the law and that we can have pass through a public hearing, 2 public hearings, and give the applicant the ability to correct deficiencies within the entire plan unit development. So it's important that we understand that this is not, we are not looking at the 5th phase. We are looking at all phases. There were many, many issues with the development as far as deficiencies that were and are still requirements in this city, as they have been since day one with this subdivision. We have several legally binding development agreements that are outside of the rezoning action that was updated several times throughout time. And so we are cross-referencing the approval conditions that we're proposing tonight with that, as well as drawing a rational nexus to improving these deficiencies throughout the development. And so a lot of these deficiencies, all of them are zoning-related deficiencies, things that were within our code, development regulations, et cetera. For example, landscaping. I know that we did kind of get into that conversation a little bit at the last hearing. Landscaping was a major part of that for the area directly adjacent to Connors Road and the detention pond that's on Enclave and Connors Road. There is also some amenities changes or amenities requirements that we've had all along, such as bike racks and various different things that were in the development agreement that have not materialized. The developer, I have spoken with the developer's attorney on multiple occasions, and as we know, this has been on our agenda for quite some time. We've tried to hash out any details that we can, or at least the city has attempted to do so, and try to better understand if there's any issues with the conditions, the set of conditions that are in front of you tonight. And we have tried in earnest to do that, and we have not been met with a response. And so it is important also to understand that we are looking to move forward tonight without the developers' buy-in, if you will, or agreement with the conditions, being that these are conditions that have previously essentially already been approved to a lot of them as a part of our own development standards that we already have when they initially started building here. And so before we sign off on another plat and before we get off the correct road here, we want to give the public the opportunity. There's many homeowners that are here tonight as well that have contacted our office and have expressed many concerns with just approving another phase of this development and not fixing the things that were required of them like we would require of any developer. And so we are not being punitive with these actions. These are simply fixes that we have drawn and try to be as fair as possible to the applicant, and we of course wanted their buy-in through this entire period, to which we have only received one response from them earlier on after an initial meeting. And so we tried to take their response and line up as much as we could with their response and try to come up with a middle ground. And that is what's in front of you tonight, those conditions.
This is it in entirety?
That's it in its entirety. And so if you recall from your first packet that you got, you had a lot of papers in front of you. We've been able to reduce that into those bullet points and address each of the different deficiencies that we saw and that we were able to take account of. And so as a part of all of this homework, we did a zoning audit on this development, and that's where we're getting these deficiencies from. And we just cross-referenced those to our code. We cross-referenced those to the UDC that this plan unit development was under at that time, and still is today. So as of right now, we are looking to move forward with an approval with those conditions that are in front of you, so they can get forward before the city council, and so we can have a second hearing on this as well.
Approval of what?
Approval of the alteration of plan unit development for Liberty Point with the conditions of that are attached.
But again, what has been presented to us thus far has just been phase 5. You're saying you're considering all phases of Liberty Point. Is that true?
That is true, yes. In your packets, there's the previous phases. We included those, phases 1 through 4 as well, so you could have that land area and the surveys in front of you when we're making a decision.
Does Commission have any questions of Ron? Seems a little open-ended to me. Yes?
I have a couple of questions, I think. A couple
Yes,
questions
go.
for Ron. Is the developer for phase, because as the chairman said, we've been talking about phase 5, and now we're talking about the other phases. So is the developer of phase 5 the same developer of the other phases that are in question or that are requiring some changes, updates?
Sure. So the initial developer is a gentleman by the name of Trey Robinson. It went into bankruptcy and then was purchased. A portion of the development, the part that we're actually discussing, phases 1 through 5, was then picked up by the applicant here tonight, Robbie Robinson.
Okay, so just want to make sure the answer to my question is that the developer for 5 is the same developer for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
The first phase was Trey Robinson.
Okay.
Phases 2 through 5 is Robbie Robinson.
Okay,
We have a development agreement that was updated with Liberty Homes. I believe the last updated copy was in, I want to say 2010. Yep, that's what I was thinking, 2010.
okay.
So he should be aware of all of these, all of this that was within the development agreement. It is legally binding and passes to the next developer as well.
You just answered my next question. I was going to ask it more of in a business sense, but I guess, because that's my background, but I guess it's the same thing.
It's fully
When they
transferable.
purchased the property, they purchased, it wasn't just an asset purchase, they purchased that were required to take on the liabilities of of going forward.
That is correct. It's within our development agreement. Like almost all plan unit developments, it's usually multiple. If it's not one developer, it's multiple developers, and it's almost always transferable. Everything that we do in land use really runs with the land. So it's hard to shake conditions off of anything, no matter if it's a PUD or if it's not. It's hard to, if there's an approval and there was a change to a certain zoning district, let's say, PUD in this case, then those conditions carry forward.
Okay, good, thank you.
Is the developer present?
Yes, sir.
Look
Joe
familiar?
Fowler, Douglas Field. And this is Robbie Robinson, who was the developer of units 2, 3, 4, and 5. His son lost the original. It sat fallow for a long time, and then he picked it up and began to develop units 2, 3, 4, and 5. The plan for this subdivision, you may remember, was for 700 lots, and that failed, and the city now owns approximately 200 acres that I believe is planned for a park.
Right.
That may or may not have come before you, but that's my understanding. This is the set of drawings for Phase 5 that was submitted and submitted to the staff on February the 21st, 2022, last year. Mr. Elliott gave preliminary approval, but then speaking with staff, was told that there were zoning issues that needed to be addressed, and you've heard Ron summarize what the city has said are now zoning issues that relate to the rest of the subdivision, not just to Phase 5. From our perspective, what we are here before you to do tonight is to simply ask for the same approval for Phase 5 that this board gave to, and then the council after it, to units 2, 3, 4 that has already been constructed and approved and is on the ground. Now, Ron and I met on site at the HOA with Robbie and other representatives of the homeowners, and a great deal of issues came up. And sort of what's in the nature of ex post facto legislation, what's happening is, after Mr. Robinson has already priced all of these lots and is under contract to sell these lots on Phase 5, he's being asked to do a lot of things that were not done as a part of Phase 1. Now, it is absolutely the case that Ron and I have gone over it. As always, with my office, he's incredibly cooperative. He always returns phone calls. That doesn't happen in some jurisdictions. Let me tell you, we're grateful. And we've gone through these at length, and essentially what I ended up saying at the end is, look, we just cannot agree that what should have been done with respect to Phase number 1, admittedly it happens to be Robbie's son, But he's a developer of himself. He went bankrupt, and now what's happening is, prior to these lots having been, or rather after these lots were put under contract, he's now put into a situation where he would have to pay money to go to the closing to sell these lots. Now, there are a lot of things in here that are perfectly fine. It's sort of like bringing it up into 2023 standards. Different things about what you can do in the front yard, side yards. It's got to be four sides sodded. You can't have any mechanical things like HVAC equipment that's visible. You have to have certain caliper trees. All of that stuff is perfectly fine. We're sort of bringing it into the 23rd century, but the problem is everything else that was not done. Now, in connection with Phase 2, there was a question that was posed to Mr. Robinson about what to do about sidewalks, and he spoke with Mr. Elliott, and he said, pay a bond to the city of $10,000. We're still doing things that are now actually being done with respect to the cul-de-sac. Pay $10,000 into the city for what was in essence a bond, and then $2,500 for what would be striping for what's shown in the streets regarding where turn-ins and so forth would be done. All that was done as a part of Phase 2. Nothing was required with respect to what you have before you tonight with respect to Phase 2, 3, or 4. And now we're in the situation where homeowners are concerned about the fact that, as Commissioner Rogers pointed out last time, when you ride by and look at it, it's not a very pretty sight on the front. But who should be the person to bear that? Now, the property along the front is not owned by the owner of lots that are in Section 5, 37 lots that are proposed for Unit 5. It's owned by the HOA. And the HOA just paid for the sign that you may have seen if you've been by the property recently. And that bank has been stabilized in construction, in connection with the construction of the roundabout there. We believe from a legal perspective that any developer, whoever it happened to be, would be entitled to get normal approval for the engineering plats that were submitted 15 months ago now, without the requirement to go back and pay for things that were not required earlier. Ron mentioned that there were development agreements that were binding and enforceable. I haven't happened to have seen any of those. I'm not aware of any requirement that says that what may have been required with respect to unit number 1 now travels down to and is binding upon the current owner. What we are here before tonight, we don't believe is a zoning approval, although that is the way it's titled on the agenda. We believe we're here for final plat approval. There, and I could go line by line through all of these, which I'd be glad to do, but there is a requirement that there be, for example, a trail that would connect Section 5, Unit 5, to a park that may be built in the future, and there is a reserved section for that to occur on this plat. There's a request for a bicycle rack. We'd be glad to do something with respect to that. But for expenses that would, we estimate, be over $300,000, we think that's a big price to pay for a final plat approval for unit number 5. Mr. Robinson's here, and he'd be more than glad to give you all the history that he has with respect to units 2 through 5. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Fowler.
Okay.
Do you recall the date of the conversation, or roundabouts the date about the sidewalks with Mr. Elliott?
Mr. Robinson can address that.
Thank
That's
you.
all right.
Yes. I'm Robbie Robinson, the developer there. The sidewalks were talked about on phase number 2, which was in 2019, and that's when he required us to pay the $10,000 up front and the $2,500.
I remember this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions to the developer? Ron, I am still confused as to what you're asking us to do. Quite different from what was just presented by the developer. You're asking us to approve these changes for phases 1 through 5, or 1 through 4? What?
For the entirety of the PUD.
So that would be phases 1 through 5.
That's right. If you recall the Mirror Lake rezoning in 2021, if you recall, that was a city-initiated rezoning, but it affected all parts of that PUD. And that included the portions that were already constructed already. So once you make an alteration to a PUD, it needs to address the entirety of the PUD, and that's what we're looking to do tonight. We need to address the PUD. We're talking about the entirety of the land area that's subject to that plan unit development district, essentially. So I did hear Mr. Fowler. He did mention about the final plat and being able to come forward tonight to get a final plat, but final plats don't actually come to the Planning Commission. They go directly to the City Council. And the applicant did notice for an alteration to a plan unit development, which is a zoning action. And so that's what we're expecting to have done tonight, is just to have the approval with, to hopefully get an approval with conditions as we have submitted them. We've tried to work with the applicant on for several months on these different things, but we haven't really gotten any responses. So it's time to move forward.
Well, if you have some specific questions, I'd like to open this to a public hearing, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will we have time for comments?
Yep, that's
I
what
do
just-
have a
what I
question
just
for
said.
Ron.
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman. So you're saying the applicant didn't respond to the list we have here? Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's what you said, Mr. Fowler mentioned that you couldn't agree.
Mm-hmm.
But he did mention there were some things that the applicant was willing to do, but we don't know what those are. So I feel like there's a breakdown right there on what's the applicant willing to do. I understand what staff's position is, which leads me to my next question for Mr. Drummond. Which falls back to the ex facto that Mr. Fowler mentioned. I kind of was thinking that as Ron was making his introduction to this application. And so my question for you is that a concern with what you've heard in your professional opinion?
David,
Sir?
to clarify, I think I have a parallel or similar concern that goes right along with this. So sections 1 through 4 are a fait accompli. I mean, they're already in existence. Are there houses built out there?
Yes, sir, let me address that to you.
Yeah.
Unit number 1, which my son did,
Uh-huh.
came before zoning and was approved and developed and signed off by the city council. Then he lost it. From that point, it went on the auction block. I came in and bought the rest of the development. But we did unit number 2, which we came back before the city council for approval for zoning and for a final plat, and was approved. Also for unit number 3, same situation, back through zoning, back through construction plans, back to approval. Also on unit number 4. Only when we got to unit number 5 did we have this issue when I went to pick up the construction plans that were approved by Bobby Elliott. He said, there's a zoning issue that needs to be clarified. I said, okay, we're willing to do whatever necessary. Then they came up with this list of all this stuff they wanted to be done, which we have no responsibility to. Now, we're willing to help, but we figured the stuff that Ron had on his list was over $300,000 to fix whatever was happening in the front section we had nothing to do with. So we're under contract on these 37 lots that were approved by Bobby Elliott, the zoning, not the zoning director, but the construction person. And we're kind of stuck here in the middle. That was back in March of last year. So we've missed a whole season. Now we're going into another season, and we're still stuck here tonight wasting y'all's time. So we really don't know what to do about it. Now, we have
Yeah.
customers here that have purchased in the subdivision, but those were done 10 years ago. So, I mean, you know, we're willing to help, but we don't have any control for the upfront. The homeowner association owns that, which is these ladies and men, gentlemen right here. So if you want to talk to them about doing these things, then maybe they'll be willing to do that.
Well, I have a question that goes right along with all of that. And I'm going to address my remarks to Mr. Johnson and our attorney. Since we've got 4 phases that are already approved, in the ground, people living in there,
100%.
all that sort of stuff, how can we go back now, whoever said it earlier, ex post facto, and add requirements or provisions in the zoning relative to the first 4 phases when they already exist? They were already done under a previous approval, a previous set of circumstances. I don't think we can really go back now and alter the circumstances or the requirements under which they're required to exist, can we? Ron?
So the development plan that's in place, the agreement,
Yeah.
does require what the city's asking.
So these things now,
The development plan requires 2 clubhouses with 2 pools. It requires walking trails throughout the development. It requires tennis courts plural. It requires playgrounds plural. It requires park areas plural. It requires horseshoe pits plural. Basketball courts plural. Open air pavilions, pedestrian trail systems. The agreement requires all this.
so that was in the original agreement or the original approval and is an existing requirement for the development. Oh, all right.
And see, that part was 200 acres of 700 houses, of which we have 202. The city owns the balance of that all these requirements are placed on. That's their piece of property. We have conformed to ours to the T,
Well, then,
all 4 developments.
so are we talking about a prorated amount of liability for the current developer, or we want him to put in the whole thing, or what?
The city has proposed a compromise on this.
Oh,
That's what you see in front.
And see, we have a pool house, 2 tennis courts, a clubhouse, a parking area, and walking trails all through the development. That was done on the very first phase of unit number 1, that y'all approved and was constructed identical to what was approved.
okay. Well, that answers my question. And, and when you say that y'all approved, it wasn't us.
Well,
We wasn't y'all.
I'm sorry. You know, y'all are kind of the clutch between the public and the government. We would
Yeah.
depend on y'all for a little of vision out there.
Yeah, okay. That's my issue.
Thank you.
Okay, unless there's another burning thing, I would like to open this to, ma'am, please sit down for now.
I have to go, can I not speak?
I'm about to call a public hearing, unless there are some questions that the commissioners have. I see none. So I'll open this now to a public hearing. Anyone opposed to or approve of this presentation made to the commission tonight? Yes, ma'am, are you speaking for or against this proposal?
Yeah, well, yes, on behalf of the homeowners, before you guys vote, I wanted to say something.
Well, that's what we're doing. Give us your name and address, please.
Hi, I'll make it quick because I have a meeting to go to. But my name is Kenesha Cook. I've lived at Liberty Point a little bit over 5 years, and I'm the HOA president. Haven't been the president that long. Just to be clear, the HOA board has only been established since December of 2022. Now, I do have something to read from another homeowner that lives in our neighborhood. Her name is Holly Davenport. She's lived in our neighborhood for a very long time. She's actually one of the longest homeowners that have lived in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, she was unable to make it tonight because she has other engagements. But basically, I'm going to read the whole thing for the sake of time. Her name is Holly Robinson. Like I said, she lives at 303 Freeman Circle. She says, my family and I have lived at Liberty Point subdivision since 2011. At the time we moved in, there were only 6 homes in the community, and we were the second family to move in. Approximately 2 years, there were only 2 families as residents in the community. She says we couldn't even get Dish and AT&T and Comcast and offer services to the neighborhood for so many years. She says it was definitely undeveloped and unchecked growth of no scenery, no street lights, and no amenities considering HOA dues were being paid. So as she says, which is true, for a long time, we didn't even have street lights in our subdivision. Basically, we didn't get street lights on Freeman Circle until about 3 years ago, and we basically had to beg Greystone and Robbie to kind of get that fixed because that was definitely unsafe for a lot of other homeowners. Like she said, the home was purchased from Trey Robinson. Whoever met with him as the attorney at the time of closing, she says 2 years. The other 4 homes has residents. However, the neighborhood remained undeveloped in approximately 5 years with no new homes, no upgrades to the community, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people, basically, to sum this up, they're just, angry because a lot of the stuff that was supposed to be done has not been done. People basically, they're sending their money to a P.O. box, and I have to understand what people are saying because who wants to send their money to a P.O. box and they don't really know where it's going to? So I kind of empathize and sympathize with a lot of the homeowners as well. So basically, if Mr. Robinson would just do what he was supposed to do in the first place, we honestly wouldn't be here. So as the neighborhood, we just want things that are supposed to be doing. And let's be clear, if this was another neighborhood like Mirror Lake, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation. So we just want things to be done, and that's pretty much it. So thank you.
Now, you are the president of the HOA?
Correct, I'm the HOA
Is there a
president.
set of covenants that you have?
You talking about the bylaw? We have bylaws, yes, sir.
Covenants and bylaws? And is that not the responsibility of the declarant until you take over as homeowners?
Well, let's be clear about that as well. Mr. Robinson has not officially turned anything over to the HOA board. I held a meeting back in February or March, I believe, of transition of power because it's the way it's supposed to go. He's supposed to officially hand it over to the actual HOA board, but nothing has been handed over to us legally, I guess. We don't have access to any bank records, anything like that. We don't even write a check. So if there's landscaping or anything that needs to be done, we honestly really don't know where that money is going to, just to be clear about that. So honestly, I think we were just a buffer in between all of this because had I not met Ron, we wouldn't really be knowing what's going on. So.
Well, I think that's probably right, accurate because the declarant still controls his property.
Correct, but why have a board in place if you're going to be in control? Then that's the case. We should have never been voted in if he wanted to just still remain the declarant.
I understand.
Thank you.
Any further residents that wish to speak for or against this proposal? Give us your name and address, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Phyllis Stewart. My address is 398 Jada Lane. Okay, so I've been there only about a year and a half now. And the way that I'm going to say this comment is real simple, but I hope everyone understands the severity and the magnitude of it. When there are things etched in stone, as we've heard, that should have been done, we heard it this evening, and they haven't, yet we are not able to use certain amenities and things of that nature because things are not to par. As should be. That makes every homeowner in the community, like Kenesha stated before she departed, a little upset, more than a little, because we are trying to do our due diligence the best way we can as the newcomers, not ones that have been there established 10 years like others may have been. But we came in the blunt of things, and it's very, very tacky. Our subdivision is like a sore thumb in the community. There are things that I never would have moved to this subdivision. Paying an HOA of $450, had I known, I've been in other communities that's the same HOA amount, and they have wonderful, wonderful things over there, the amenities, everything to par. When you look at Liberty Point, I oftentimes wonder, what did I get myself into? Because the gates that are up in the front of the subdivision that should, I guess, have the attraction of landscape and trees to cover, almost look like sewerage, if I'm not mistaken. It's black iron gates, like a fence, okay? And it's surrounded on either side of the subdivision. And this is what we're experiencing. We have things that have come through there, like the developer trucks. People have complained about their property being torn up by the trucks, sidewalks, things of that nature. We're paying, we are homeowners, but we want to be done right. That's all we're asking. If Robbie, get with whom he's supposed to get with, and us included, hand over the, like you said, the declaration, whatever supposed to be done, so we can get on with business, that's perfectly fine. We never have to have another meeting. But as of today, on the 17th or 16th of May, this has been a glitch in many of our sides. And people are really fed up in Liberty Point, to the point of decision-making that's at hand for most of us. It's ridiculous. And a year and a half in, sir and sirs and ma'am, if you would just take a drive through Liberty Point and see the things that seem to be nonchalant to Robbie, then you would understand why we're a little bit, salty.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. We
Okay.
just want it done.
Thank you. Some of us have
My
driven
pleasure.
through
Okay.
the community. So,
My pleasure. Thank you.
are there any further residents that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Jasmine. I'm at 384 Jada Lane, and I'm the secretary of the HOA. I spoke at the last meeting, but I just wanted to be really brief and say that at the last meeting, you all spoke about that Liberty Point was a mess. That was a general consensus by the council here. You all used words like it was a war zone, that that Liberty Point produced a subpar product. I think that was what you said, Mr. Rogers, and I agree with that. And at the end of the day, I kind of went home and I was a little disappointed because it felt like everyone here realized that it looked a mess, but they didn't want to help us. We never asked for you all's money. This is to make Mr. Robinson responsible for what he acquired. At the end of the day, even if it's a problem child, it's still you all's child. And you still have to take care of it. You can't just say, oh, well, we'll just leave that to be. That's just their problem. It's the city's problem. It's everybody's problem, because at the end of the day, we want the city of Villa Rica to reflect the wonderful city it is for all communities to be nice, not one to stick out like a sore thumb. And this neighborhood is a lot of first-time homeowners, single families, and it's really disparaging because like I said, had I known all these things, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have moved here, and I believe that I can speak for the others that would say that they would not as well. I don't know Mr. Robinson personally to say he's a bad person. I'm not saying that. But I think what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And certain things need to be done. I think we all met with Mr. Robinson and Ron and the city attorney. I think that was back in February. And it was going over the list of things to be done, and we all got the same information, and I read through it, and yes, there was a planned unit development, and yes, it was approved, but the issue is that they didn't follow what was approved. So that's the whole issue. I think a lot of things are being talked around in circles, but they did have an approval plan, and went array and they went off of that plan. So the way that you correct it, because now, okay, people are living in these homes, so we can't go back and put trees in the front of each home that was supposed to be there. We can't go back and add shrubs that was supposed to be planned to be there. So what Ron and the city suggested was, well, let's take those trees that were supposed to be at all the other 165 lots and that retention pond that is a clear eyesore. It's terrible. It's got rodents and all kinds of things in there right now. Let's put those trees in front of there. Let's invest in the landscaping so that it actually looks it doesn't look like a stepchild of of Connors Road. And that's really all that it is. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Hello, my name is Petrania Brogdon, and I live at the front of the subdivision, 97 Enclave Drive. Been there going on 4.5 years now. And I'm just really concerned about, and I'm sure everyone else is that lives in the neighborhood is concerned about property value. I'm the first house that you see when you turn in, and those revisions that's supposed to be, or the original plans that's supposed to be in there, that affects my home as well. And me being a single woman coming into the neighborhood, I would like to build some type of wealth from my home. And it isn't fair. I moved into the area because I like the area, and then I can afford the house in the area, but I want to be able to, like I said, eventually build property value. And it's not fair that I wouldn't be able to do that if the things that are, like I said, I'm not privy to everything that's happened, because when I moved in, I didn't even know it was an HOA. I knew I had to pay though. I'm paying $450 every year, and I don't have a receipt coming in or anything. I don't know where my money is going to. I can barely use the pool, the amenities. My daughter, actually, last year was actually, well, I won't even get into that, but it was a safety concern at the pool. And I just want to make sure that whatever that needs to be done, I don't care what happens in phase 5. I just hope that it just aligns with the rest of the community, because why build up phase 5 and then have phase 1 through 4 look tacky? It needs to be cohesive. So that's just my statement on it.
Thank you very much. I see no other residents. We've kind of heard pretty much the same thing from each speaker, and understand your situation. Some of us have driven through the area, including the parts on the other side of Connors Road that are under development, and it's far from completion, that's for sure. But Ron, do you have a motion that you would like to present for us to consider? Because
Sure.
I am not sure what you're asking us to do yet.
Sure, sure. And so, as we know, the Planning Commission just legally has several options before them. They can approve. They can approve with conditions. They can forward a recommendation or no recommendation at all to the City Council. So what the staff is looking to do is to approve an alteration to the Liberty Point Plan Unit development, including the conditions that the staff has submitted tonight for the commissioners to vote on, the master plan, if you will.
Okay, so it's basically either approve these conditions for phases 1 through 5, or send it to council with no recommendation?
No recommendation, or you can deny the alteration to plan unit development, which is the applicant's application. You can deny his application. And at that point, again, it would basically put us back to where we were when we first came in here, right? Where we still don't have a concept plan that's been approved, essentially. So, I think in the interest of both the applicant and the city, that there should be some approval tonight. of the request that's in front of you. It's your choice if you wish to recommend an approval with no conditions at all, which is essentially what the applicant has submitted to us. Or my other recommendation to you, which is the one that we're strongly recommending, is an approval with the conditions that the staff has been able to come up with the input that we have had from the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Ron?
Anyone prepared to make such a motion?
I'd like to make comments first.
And I have a question for
We can have some discussion after a motion. Go ahead. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve this alteration requested for the plan unit development of Liberty Point as submitted, including the recommendations by staff for these changes.
Is there a second?
Second.
I second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we go forward with the recommendations from staff to the council. Discussion.
Ron, I have a question. How many homes have been completed from one to date? I guess through 1 through 4.
165.
How many?
165.
Okay. And the HOA dues, are they currently paid to the HOA, or does the developer still collecting those? It sounds like the developer's collecting HOA dues off of 1 through 4, and they haven't handed that over? Thank you.
Nancy,
I have comments
Okay.
for,
wait a minute. Nancy?
I'm concerned about voting on this when, again, we're looking at over $400 worth of HOA fees. And I'm listening to all of the residents saying they don't know where it goes to, and it goes to a box. It's not even sent to a person. And so they're looking at, where is this money going, and why are we having these problems and not being able to use the amenities when we're already paying this amount of money? And when you're taking a look at, we're already into May, and so you have 5 months of $400. That's an awful lot of money that's going there. We're not being able to use it. So, yes, approving it with looking at those alterations, but I want to know specifically. There is no specificity for me as to what those amenities and those alterations would be, and I think that we need to know exactly what they are.
That's what was presented to us.
Yes, but some of them are rather vague.
I can provide any clarification on any item that the commission has on the list tonight that we're recommending.
Mr. Lang, you had a comment?
yeah, just a couple of quick comments. This has been before us many times, and I've heard over a dozen times just how complicated it is because it's been going on for so long. So forgive me, but I'm going to oversimplify it because it helps me understand. So I just have a couple of quick comments. So to me, I asked you this already, but it's just a comment, that once phases 2, 3, 4, and 5 were purchased by the current developer, they legally took on all the liabilities to ensure that they met the requirements as outlined in phase 1. And either that's right, correct, or it's incorrect. And if it's correct, they're responsible to do it. And if it's incorrect, they're not responsible to do it. That would be one comment. I also keep hearing from the developer and/or the attorney that phases 2, 3, and 4 were approved already by other members of P&Z Commission, and that's just not sitting well with me. The fact that either things were done differently or overlooked, or I don't want to say mistakes made, but whatever it was, and to me, does not justify continuing that, doing that again, just because we didn't enforce, we as a city, just because we didn't enforce what is legally right, and in my mind, morally right, that you don't continue. Somewhere along the line, you got to cut that off and stop. And last, I'm not happy with passing this along to council. I think this is something, it's like being a teacher and graduating somebody that can't read and write because you don't want to be bothered with them anymore. This is our responsibility. We've got to vote on this, and to my opinion, we've got to vote on this and not pass it along. And I think to approve with conditions and everything else is not right. I think we need to get it right here, and I would be inclined to hold it here and hold it up until or unless these conditions are met.
Mr.
Chairman, I'd
Lang, anything that we decide is going to be passed along to the city council, whether we approve or reject the motion on the floor. It will go to the city council. Yes?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call the question.
Question has been called as a motion to approve the recommendations of city council or of the city staff as presented. All in favor?
I'm sorry, could you explain to me what that means? Call question.
We are approving the plan that was presented by the staff to approve these conditions.
With conditions.
With conditions.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I didn't get the count of the vote. All in favor? 3 opposed? 3-2 passed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
Well, that cleared out.
as expected. All right, item A4, we will discuss at the next council meeting, next commission meeting. So it takes us to new business, RA 0323, East Wilson Street and Thomas Dorsey Drive. Ron?
Thank you, Chairman. RA-03-23 is an application to rezone property located at the corner of East Wilson Street and Thomas Dorsey Drive from commercial mixed-use CMU zone to residential single-family urban R2 zone in order to construct 2 new single-family houses. The applicant in this case lives at a property that's adjacent or owns a property that is adjacent, and they are interested in building 2 homes for their adult children to live in, being that our housing market is very expensive, and it's really hard to come by anything that they were able to consider, or that they would like to consider building these 2 homes, single-family homes, on these 2 lots. So as a part of that, the 2 lots right now face East Wilson Street, but they're looking to turn the lots, reparcel the lots, and turn them onto Thomas Dorsey Drive. So there may be some changes in the lot sizes along the way, but they would still need to meet the minimum lot size in the R2 zone, which I'm confident that they'll be able to do that.
Very good. Any questions that the commission has to Ron?
I'm absolutely, the pictures that they included in here, because I go down that road a lot since I'm not that far away, they're 100% right. There's trash that's thrown in there. I've seen people throw trash in there. People go by, and instead of turning down the street, they're continuing on Thomas Dorsey to go to the churches there, and they'll throw things out the windows right in those lots. So I'm excited about the fact that they want to do something to improve it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Is the developer or applicant
The
here?
homeowner is here, yes.
Okay. Would you like to come forward and make any comments?
Good evening. My name is Tasha Wells. We own the property at 217 on Thomas Dorsey Drive. As Ron stated, we have the 2 lots adjacent to there, but we were looking to build 2 single-family homes, one for my son and the other for my daughter. My son currently rents. He's returned from Army. He currently rents and is looking to build a home. And since we have the land, and we'd like to have them closer to us, just so we can enjoy them and the grandkids a little better.
You currently own that property?
Yes.
Okay. And you plan to redirect the property so that you will enter and exit on Thomas Dorsey Drive?
Yes. Yes.
And that's doable as far as you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, they're kind of back. I would
They're
say
more like horizontal instead
Yes.
of facing Thomas Dorsey
Right.
this way. Yeah.
But the two lots are such that they really look like they face Wilson, so you'll
Right.
have to,
Turn them around to
Right.
face Thomas Dorsey.
and since you own both of those lots, presumably, that's doable. So,
Yes.
okay. There isn't by any remote chance an HOA in that area, is there?
Councilwoman Marchman,
I hope not.
send your money to the P.O. box.
That's all.
The mystery P.O. box.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open this to a public discussion, public hearing. Anybody would like to speak in favor or against this proposal? Yes, sir, come forward, give us your name and address.
I'm Tim Driver, the owner of Midway Record Service at 226 East Wilson. And this land backs up to my commercial property. I have 6 lots there that's commercial. And that's the only concern I have, you know, somebody living right there amongst the record service like this. So I hope to keep it commercial, but it's whatever y'all, I guess, decide on here on this. You know, trouble down the road, I mean, you know, 'cause there's been a towing company there for 33 years. That's all I got to say here at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further person who wishes to speak for or against this development? If not, I'll close public hearing and ask if there's any questions or comments.
Well-
Ron, are done?
No, sorry, I wanted to make a motion.
What I have to say is, I read staff's recommendation, you know, on highest and best, and in this case, I'm going to say this, that with the plan that the Wells family has for those lots, I don't think you could get any higher and best than that, than keeping a family together on a parcel that has been in distress for so long.
Thank you. Nancy?
I understand that there is that commercial that backs up to it. A large fence would be fine, because if you're going along Dorsey Road Drive, you see there are other subdivisions there that are divided with a fence behind it to separate those houses and another subdivision that's in there. If you're going to continue down that road, you're going towards Spring Street, and those are all homes in there. I don't know that just having a commercial on one little tiny corner, when you're going to go the other way and find houses all the way down there, and then you're going to find Mountain Prospect and all of the other churches that are there that are really, very nice. I don't understand why we need to have just that commercial on a corner just that way, when certainly a fence put behind it would block the commercial part of it from the actual subdivision itself, or those two homes there. And it didn't seem to bother it before, but they tore that house down. The building that was there in the 50s was dilapidated, and I always wondered what it was used for. But when you're taking a look at across the street, there are homes and people who live there. So I don't know that having a commercial business behind it is a deterrent.
Mr. I entertain a motion.
Yes. Regarding the application submitted by Marla and Tasha Wells, application date February 20 of 23, property located at the intersection of Thomas Dorsey and East Wilson, land lot 160, district number 6. Having heard from all parties, I hereby make a motion not only to approve, but to approve with great joy. I am delighted to see this land be put to its highest and best use.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay. That takes us to item B2, Ordinance Division. Ron?
Okay. You want to do it? Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioners. So our next item that we have on the agenda is a number of different ordinance changes. We have under number 2 where it says section 8.27, which is liquor stores, package stores, and liquor outlets. I put on the, we put this on the agenda as something that we were looking to get passed tonight, because this is something that we've actually been looking to get onto your agenda for quite some time. But being that the City Council does not have a hearing in June, they do not have any meeting, that gives us some additional time to talk about that item in addition to the items that I have listed under discussion only. So I was hoping that we can instead, being that there's no rush to get that done, that we can just go ahead and include those in with discussion only as well. So we're not looking for any action for any items, any of these items moving forward until the June meeting, June 20th meeting. So I have a little presentation. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just do the little presentation. Because I know there's so many papers there, and I do not expect everybody to read all of that or be able to get through all of that. It was hard enough for me to write it. It took days to get through all of this and make sure it's right. So I put together a little presentation for us. It should be really efficient the way that it's been put together, so it shouldn't take us very long. But after each chapter, being that we're doing several chapters tonight, if you guys could just hold your comments until after each chapter, and then we can just go over the chapter itself, and I can answer any questions that you all have.
Now, basically, you're discussing modifications to this
Yes, sir.
zoning ordinance.
That's right, and it would be zoning ordinance sections, chapters 1 through 7, and it's section 8.27, 9.05, and 13.01. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, since there's so much material involved in this, excuse me, and we need to consider, carefully all of the recommendations here, would it be appropriate to ask staff to, instead of doing this tonight, to let's schedule a working session, one either late afternoon or one evening or something, and go through all of this material in a setting designed just to pay attention to this particular issue, and give us all a chance to better study up on this and understand the issues.
I personally would like to hear the presentation if it's reasonably brief. Then we can do this, and then there's an opportunity we could do something additional later on. So.
Yeah, and as a part of us being in it, we're in a good space where we don't have the pressure of a city council meeting in front of us. So I am certainly looking for buy-in, changes, anything that you would like to see, so we can bring that back to the office and then come back here, hopefully at the next meeting, and hopefully have an answer to some of those different things.
So do you think you can actually make a reasonably brief presentation of the?
I'm gonna definitely try.
All right. I can. I've got some paper clips up here. I can throw a few at you at the time to time.
All right. So behind you, it might be better if you guys maybe just swivel a little bit, but we're gonna look up. Let me go back here. Hold on. So these are the dates for this. So I'm just introducing the item tonight. Planning Commission vote next meeting, City Council at the next meeting. So Chapter 1, the only two changes that I had for this subsection was 1.04. So I introduced new regulations for change of use applications. So this was actually a pretty significant problem that we've developed in the community, where we had business owners that would come to the office and they would want to open their business up, but they would want to open their businesses on lots that are essentially substandard lots, or substandard. They don't have development regulations that have really been applied to them probably for a very long time. At the way that our current ordinance reads is all changes of use. If you're changing from, say, a restaurant to a retail, or an office to a restaurant, or what have you, that the entire zoning ordinance would kick in. Which obviously does not work in practice, because most of the time these are sites that are already in existence. So we wouldn't want to put undue hardship on these changes of use, but we also still want to make sure that it meets some regulations within the community, right? For overall welfare and safety. And the second issue there is we exempted municipal, county, and state-owned properties from use and use district regulations. This is in correlation with established case law, City of Decatur v. DeKalb County, I want to say, or it may have been School District of DeKalb. But that was one pretty significant case in the state, where it established the courts that state and county and municipal owned properties can be rendered exempt from certain use district regulations within within the ordinance, but that does not, of course, exempt them from the following supplementary regulations that we may have within our ordinance. So that's the key difference there within those sections. And so I'm going to go a little bit further here in that change of use to try to make it make sense, as I like to say. So I put a little chart together here so you can kind of see what we're trying to do. So if you see here, we have now 3 categories: undeveloped lots, underdeveloped lots, and developed lots. This would only apply to changes of use. So if you're a new business that looks to go into an existing structure, then we would consider, of course, this to be a developed lot. It has a structure on it already. And we would have to, when you apply for your business license, we'd only be checking for parking to ensure that there's enough parking on the site, which is standard practice in almost every town anywhere. Expanded structures beyond 35%. So if I'm expanding my gross square footage of my building by more than 35%, then all of our development regulations should kick in for an underdeveloped or a developed parcel. And now it's the same thing for new structures, but that anytime you're putting up a new structure, a new primary structure, or what have you, all of our regulations should kick in no matter what type of lot it is, right? We want to ensure that any new structure is built to the current code. So I put in here also some different definitions here, which we're going to get to at the very end of the presentation in the definitions section. But I had to define all these 3 different things so I know how to apply them when the business comes in and applies for the permit. We were able to go through a couple different scenarios within the office to ensure that we stress test this to make sure that it works. Before we were able to essentially unleash this once this does get voted on, if this is in the affirmative. And so far, so good. I've been able to get the results that we were anticipating just based off of this chart, which should help all new businesses that look to open, because as of right now, it's a lot of question marks as far as what we should do with a change of use. But we know that the current ordinance, as is, it certainly needs to change when it comes to change of use, because we cannot apply the entire zoning ordinance to people who are in an existing structure. That wouldn't make any sense. And again, this is the government exception that we were talking about. So it reads out: municipal, county, and state-owned properties shall be exempt from all use and use district regulations set forth within this ordinance. This section shall not be construed to exempt such uses and structures from following development or supplemental regulations found herein. Utility providers are subject to all regulations found within this ordinance unless otherwise indicated. So that should be the end of chapter 1. Is there any questions on that chapter?
Is that all included in this material that you gave us tonight?
It,
Okay, fine.
it is. Mhm.
Okay,
This is just the presentation version.
okay, good.
Sure. All right, so chapter 2, is just a quick summary here. Section 2.02, we revised the Planning Commission's membership terms and the term language per the City Council and the City Attorney's request. And we introduced a new attendance policy. We introduced required training for commissioners. We removed the authority within this section for plat decisions. We talked about that already when we introduced section 2, which the City Council ended up remanding that back to the City Council or back to the Planning Commission, so we can go, include it in with these changes. We also changed language referring to an administrative and plat committee that we don't have. We have a technical advisory committee, so I subbed all that information in. Removed inconsistent staff appeal language so it lines up with chapter 11. We revised language surrounding what a variance can be applied for, so we ensure that we're offering all citizens and applicants due process under the law. I have some concerns about that here as our current sections are written, and I'm attempting to correct that now. And also, we've removed a lot of duplicate language that was in this section, which we did kind of go over in the last iteration of this Section 2 ordinance update. So here's the membership change that's being proposed. We had an existing section that has been crossed out, and I've included in here in the letters, the part that's in black and the part that's in green would be the new section. This is a direct port from what the city attorney sent me, and all I did was just copy it and paste it into the ordinance as he's written it and recommends for it to be approved. The attendance policy, as of right now, is if you miss 3 out of 4 consecutive scheduled meetings within a calendar year, it should be automatic resignation, and we're trying to change that to 3 regularly scheduled meetings, so that would be within the entire calendar year of 12 months. We would also like to add in a training policy as well to attend 2 training classes during each term of office. So there's 2 training classes at the state, and these are 2-year terms, so we would be anticipating folks to do training, at least 1 training class a year, or if they would like to double up and do 2 classes in 1 year, that's fine. That would be up to the commissioner, the individual.
You know,
commissioner.
that's,
Wait a minute, hold on, wait until he's done with this section.
Please,
Okay.
if I could just get through this last section here. The preliminary plat procedure correction that we talked about, this is again related to plats. This came before you back in February. No action was taken yet. The technical advisory committee, we're just again changing out that language of administrative and plat committee to the correct language of technical review committee. And there's a crossed out section on the bottom that says the Planning and Zoning Commission shall be responsible for approving a coordinated calendar for the administrative and plat committee or other advisory or review committees. The city staff knows, we know our schedules to where we can, of course, schedule these meetings, at any time, really. We have a set schedule already. It's every other Wednesday at 10 o'clock. We would like to, of course, keep that on our schedules as is. It works really, really good for us, and we're not we don't require public hearings or public meetings of any form. These are private meetings, essentially. These are just city business meetings. And also the staff appeal language, we wanted to change that too. There was an exception on the bottom for recourse from the decisions of the community development director regarding administrative review of development plans. This is the only section of the entire ordinance where this shows up, so I'm not really sure why this would be here, but it certainly does not align with section 11 of our ordinance. So we want to make sure all of the sections align, and we double-checked all parts of the ordinance, and this is the only section that says that an appeal from a staff decision would come to the Planning Commission. An appeal to a staff decision has to go to the city council. If I'm not mistaken, that's covered under the state law, right?
That's part of what, we do change the section line.
Yes.
So we have to align all of our appeals with the new law.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I did look at that when you brought it to me, but I want to talk to you probably some more too about how we can make sure all that stuff is in there.
We're probably going to ask for more too,
Oh,
zoning decisions.
figure it out. Okay. Duties of the Villa Rica City Council.
Wait a minute, no, you're going into a different area now. I have great concerns about this particular section, and I've expressed those to David Mecklin, and I've expressed them to the council members. I think 2 years is too short a term for a commissioner, and I would almost appeal to the 2 new members who are just coming on board. I think it takes more than 2 years to get up to speed. Further, this
Can you take
length
notes?
of terms for P and Z has changed from 1 year to 3 years to 2 years. And again, 1 and 2 years, I think is too short. The council is bent on making this a 2-year term, so it agrees with their term of office. I think that's irrelevant. You know, if this were a 3-year term, they could still fit in their requirements of being able to appoint a commissioner. Their terms do not conflict with the 3, or it can be adjusted to be 3 years. Further, the dates that you show on there, 2 of us on this current commission were done in '22, yet we're still here. So you've changed those dates to the point where wards 3 and 4, per those dates shown, our terms ended last year. But, and again, I think the requirements to attend training sessions, forget the way it was worded, but 2 a year or something to that effect. If you have commissioners that are on for more than 2 years, they probably have already attended some of those. So I'm not sure that that needs to be specified so clearly in the ordinance.
Yes,
John,
I agree with John.
Nancy, Tom had
okay,
previously
excuse me.
requested comment.
Yeah, and, you know, the training is not, I don't want to be critical of anybody's, course, presentations there or anything, but John and I went to one a couple of years ago. And it was in Americus. And so we drove down one afternoon, spent the night in a hotel in downtown Americus, and spent most of the rest of the day out there. Or was that 1 or 2 days?
2 days.
2 days out there at going to school, going to the class. And, you know, there was a lot of other, I don't want to call them extraneous, but kind of outside information. They would have discussions about things that weren't exactly, in my opinion, relevant to planning and zoning and what we're doing here. And, you know, the city, of course, paid for it, paid mileage. They paid for the hotel, paid for our meals. That's a kind of an expense for the city. is there not some other training? I mean, we got the University of West Georgia right here. Is there not something we could do to work out some University System of Georgia, training with a real estate professor or something, and just have one session and let the whole committee here, commission, attend that one training session and not have to travel a couple hundred miles and go to that expense and all that sort of stuff. And I can imagine there are people who can't turn loose from their business, that long, and maybe some people that wouldn't be interested in traveling that much. I'm not anymore. I traveled enough in my career I got no interest in going somewhere overnight now anymore. I had nothing wrong with Americus. That's part of my old stomping grounds, and I went to school there at Georgia Southwestern, but it's not a major tourist stop for overnight. So, I don't know. I wish y'all would take another look, if it's permissible, take another look at that training requirement and see what we can do about making that a little more palatable and a little more accessible, and quite frankly, a little more professional and direct, right on point.
Dr. Mims?
For 5 years, I was on the Historical Preservation Commission and chaired it for about 3 years. I have attended 5 workshops for HPC while I was on the commission. I have also attended 3 others that I paid for myself and have the certificate for doing it because they're online. Actually, the HPC has a wonderful training session once a year. We have for 3 days a week, like on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for 2 hours. Sometimes it's every single day for a whole week. You'll have it from like 9 to 11 in the morning, then you have an hour break, then you come back again from 1 to 2 or 3, and they have different speakers. I have not seen too much overlapping. I've seen more overlapping on the face-to-face ones. The other thing is that HPC did in the past allow you to go into their website and to take their courses and to read it and then take a little quiz afterwards, and you also got credit for that, which is why the same year that Ron got the scholarship for the National, I had the Georgia scholarship to attend, I think it was in Rome, so that the city of Bellbreaker was reimbursed $75 for my registration. So yes, I have attended all of those, and I continue to do so because I'm interested in historical preservation as well. But it's very simple to do that. The traveling was fun, but yes, going to Rome, going to Columbus, going down to near Helen, those were all nice places. But I'm afraid that what we got out of it was that there's an Irish pub where you can get Shanti if you want to, and the speakers were exactly almost the same as before, and the only thing that we ended up getting was a newer book. I think that was probably a waste of hotel bill and having that part of it. I got more out of the presentations that were online for 2 hours, 6 hours a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 2 in the evening, ending at 5 o'clock. And for many of them, even the people who were in real estate could attend them because they had to put in their number because it was relevant for them. And then at the end, just the last couple that I've attended, because I wasn't on HPC here, I did go ahead and pay $100. I took it off on income tax, but I also have my certificate because I said I need to have it sent to me. They sent it to me on email, I printed it out, and I have it. So the training is not the problem if it's done correctly. You don't need to have West Georgia because we're looking at what we're doing here, and it would be nice there, but I think that what HPC does in the state is probably more relevant and easier to attain because it isn't hard for many of us to do that. In addition to that, the nice thing about doing it online is that they record all of it so that you can go in there, they know who's in there, you have to sign in, they know that you've attended, and as I said, it's right there, they can record it, so you could go back and refresh yourself for maybe 2 weeks afterwards because it's open for that. And I think that was I've gotten more out of that than I have anything else.
Any other comments?
Sorry.
Go.
Oh, okay. So on the training, very quickly, if there is something online, obviously that would be preferable. And if not, at least something that was a day trip, not an overnight trip. I don't know that one training session or two training sessions is much of an issue for me. You know, the number of them, beyond, one or two, but online obviously is more desirable. On the terms, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, I agree with the chair and others that, a 3-year term has some advantages to it. But I do have a question on, let's just say it's 2-year term, and someone leaves early or is asked to leave or for some reason, and you step into their term, and they've completed 1 year. Does the new commissioner come in with a 1-year term?
Yes.
Because it ends with theirs, or does it?
Expired term.
Expired term. So now you have even if it's a 2-year term, you have the possibility of what's in effect a 1-year term. And so that could happen, I guess, even if you have 3 years. If you have 3 years and they leave in 2 years, you still only have 1 year. I think that should be addressed somehow. So if a new commissioner comes in, they're not maybe in a year or even a 6-month, position where their term ends like that.
Just so I
Yes,
understand.
John?
Are you saying that, let's say that person A was in the position for 1.5 years, and then person B comes on board to replace that person for that remaining 6 months, and your concern is the term, the requirement for training within that 6-month period, essentially, because they're a new member coming on board. Is that right?
Well, that's part of it, but I'm actually really saying is I'm concerned with just having a commissioner come in and having a 6-month, in effect, they're having a 6-month term, because all they're doing is completing somebody else's term.
Yes.
That clock, I believe, should start over, or if you want to have them end on all the same years, then you make it a 2-year and 6-month term. So they take the remainder of the previous commissioner's term and then start the 2-year clock, so it ends at least on December 31st.
John? I agree with Doug for a lot of it, but I wanted to say and didn't. Some of the problems that I think we saw tonight with so many different commissioners, and planning and zoning is really a big deal, even though we don't have an up-down vote. There's a lot that goes on here within the city that we're looking at. And so when you've got different developers coming in, and you've got a commissioner serving 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden, you've got a new thing going on. We heard tonight about, all these phase 5 with different things going on. And is it that man's fault? No, not necessarily, because there were different commissioners. So a 1 year or a 6 year or even a 1.5 time in there is going to certainly, in my opinion, interfere with the planning and zoning laws and rules that we want to pass on to the city council.
And I think also removal of the plats. We've been pushing to try to get more and more responsibility for planning and zoning. And this takes away, again, another element of planning and zoning and turns it over to just the council. So again, I'm looking for more involvement and assistance to the council and not take away things that we currently have responsibility for. Again, I've stated some of these things to Mr. Mecklin, and he's going to present this at the next council meeting, and it's going to be approved. So all of our discussion is for naught, because I've already heard. In fact, one of the council members already thinks it's already been approved. So, but at any rate, those are our comments. Rod, David?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for being off topic, but did we take action on B2?
No, that was one that was put off till,
As a part, just a discussion item, I'm gonna cover that as a part of the presentation.
Okay,
It's
thank
in
you.
here, we just haven't gotten there yet. Yeah.
Just making sure I wasn't completely lost here. Thank you.
Well, I thought we had,
It's okay,
I
it's
thought
been
we
a
had
while.
delayed that.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't think there was ever a motion, but maybe it should be a motion.
Okay.
Move that to the next meeting. So whatever meeting you're gonna take it over.
yeah, we should do that, so I don't have to renotice it. That's a great idea, thank you.
so you want a motion to delay?
If we could, yeah, if we could have a motion just to, table voting for section 8.27, till the June 20th meeting.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, guys. I'm writing down all of your comments here, each one of you that spoke. I'm making sure I have a detailed list here so I can bring this back to the office and share all this with the city manager. And so we can talk about some of this stuff and hopefully make some changes here too.
What about the dates that are stated in your changes? It
Um,
says that terms for wards 3 and 4 are over.
Yeah, so the way that it was explained to me, and Kevin, you can jump in here too, because this was something that was sent over to my office, and I had to just essentially just plug it in. But the way that it was explained to me, at least, even though there's some terms that were ending or have ended already, we needed to know, we're using it essentially as a bookmark where we can build off of the 2-year terms from each of them. So we know which ones are up at what points, essentially. I don't know if Kevin, if you have another way of explaining.
I talked to David about that, this specific board. There was movement to, with some other boards, I think everybody had lost track when terms started and ended. And so other than this board, every other board has got the same terms in the ordinance.
As this one, right? Or, you know,
No, I think this one is unique. Yes.
okay. Wow, okay.
I guess, also, did you mention, I know you mentioned missing 3 consecutive meetings, changed to 3 within a annum or 12-month period?
That's right.
But I think you also mentioned that, I heard you say that it would require immediate require immediate resignation.
It would constitute an automatic resignation.
Automatic resignation. Wouldn't the, in case of a severe, God forbid, medical situation or something like that,
Sure, yeah.
wouldn't the chair be able to hear from the commissioner what the situation was and not go to the council with it, but say, under the circumstances, he or she doing a great job, they had a problem they had to deal with or something that came up, and I don't want their resignation.
Clearly be reappointed. There's nothing to
It'd be simpler just not to resign and be reappointed, all right?
I think that, there's no official role in that sense where the chairman would essentially, I'm actually searching in my mind for what exactly the action would even be. Because, if, let's say it's not automatic per se, it sounds like kind of that's where you're kind of headed, where it's like, maybe it shouldn't be an automatic thing, but it should be something that is decided upon by someone, but that's not within the powers of the chairman of the commission. But the chairman obviously would have a say in if he would like to see if this person would can stick around or not. But I think these types of things are really a case by case type of a situation. if it's something like that's excused, like medical related or something like that, just like if it was a staff member or anyone else, I think there would be some pretty significant understanding that there's a medical situation that's going on. I think the last thing that we would want to do is kick someone off of a board, or recommend for someone to be removed from a board that has a medical issue that's going on, or a death in the family, or something else that is clearly, if you have a heart and an understanding, would clearly be something out of the norm, out of the norms of operation.
Well, the way it was originally drafted was 3 out of 4, so that you could have some give and take in what the situation was.
Right.
The way this is stated, we've already got commissioners that have already missed 1 meeting, so they only have 2 more to go, and they're going to be gone. So I think making it 3 for the entire length of the term is.
Oh, no, not the
restrictive.
term. It's not for the length of the term. It's for just the 12 months
Well,
within
even
the term.
for a month, for the 12 months. A
My
little harsh.
My thought is the recommendation goes to council. Council makes that decision. And the chair and the commission should have some say in that recommendation. And I don't believe it should be automatic. I mean, especially if there's circumstances that's approved by the commission or by the chair. And again, all we're doing is making a recommendation. Now, would it be grounds to have a recommendation to remove someone if they fell under that without any reasonable excused absence? Sure.
Well, and that's already defined, so, yeah.
I think I'd like
Maybe there's a
to,
word in there that, thank you.
just personal, this is just a personal, I don't know if feelings come into it, but this is just a personal feeling, is to remember, and everybody knows this, but to remember that this is a group of volunteers, and I feel like as volunteers that are doing it, without pay and doing this on behalf of, because of the caring of the city, that we shouldn't be in a position to have to feel like maybe we're fighting or having to cling on to having an important role, keep our positions and have an important role, and not feel like, we always say, just a recommendation board. I'd like to be more than that. I mean, I'm not looking for this group to have more power, but it just feels ugly to have to try and cling on and not have more taken away from you when all you're doing is volunteering and giving you time to help the city.
And I agree with that, Commissioner Lang, and I think that also on the other side is the responsibility that we all agreed to by volunteering. So there is that.
Absolutely.
I think that we volunteer because we want to do it, yes. From what I've seen in other places, when somebody just blatantly doesn't want to come, but if you are for COVID, you came down with it, obviously you can't be here because you can't be in the meeting. For anybody who have an accident, for example, David's accident, perhaps missing one. For me, I got thrown into the hospital and I had no choice. And so when you're in the hospital for 6 days and the doctor says you're going right now, you're going to miss a meeting, that's not something that I was planning on doing because I wanted to come. Did I stream to check and see what's going on? Yes. The hospital staff, even for me, said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm watching a meeting I'd like to be at." So you're taking a look at the fact that while you're watching, you can't vote, but you're there, you want to be there. I agree with both of you. That there are certain circumstances that we cannot avoid. You can't avoid COVID. You can't avoid being thrown in the hospital. You can't avoid the fact that maybe you had an accident and now you're got all these things going on. But I have also seen blatant missing meetings just because, well, I really didn't want to go. I didn't think there was going to be anything important.
I was going to also echo that, actually. not only this commission, but I have seen it also with another commission where we have had a lot of absences, and it's taken note in the community as well that there has been absences on these boards. We've had at least 2 consecutive meetings within the past 7 or 8 months where we couldn't even get a quorum together. But there's also been some unexcused absences as well throughout at least the last year that I can't account for. But there needs to be some sort of structure to a board in order for us to operate appropriately.
What about excused, unexcused? If we had a list of excused absences as opposed to unexcused absences, just like they would have in a school system perhaps.
Right, yeah.
That would probably be giving you the specificity that you need.
Sure, but
a
here's
short
the
list
thing
anyway.
with that. So the material difference is not really showing itself because there's still a missing commissioner, and we still may not be able to have a quorum no matter what. Even if it is a medical reason, no matter what the reason is, if we don't have a commissioner and we can't move forward with meetings, and that's over a longer period of time, then that's something that the city has to do something about, because these are applicants who are paying us to be here tonight. No matter what, they're paying the city to be here, and we have to make a 100% effort to be here. And we haven't really had those discussions here, even with the past commissioners. We haven't really talked much about attendance, but I would be completely lying to you right now if I didn't tell you that there were members of the public who have approached our office and asked us what is going on with the Planning Commission as far as attendance. There has been people who have done that.
Well, we did miss 2 meetings in a row because of absences. We did not have a quorum, and that was an embarrassment to the city. But those were not absences that could have otherwise been, that they were due to illness.
So we have to, you see the balancing act though, is what I'm getting at, that there's a balancing act between having some sort of rules in place. And honestly, I think that the rules that we're proposing is actually a lot, as far as the term, I guess the attendance part of it all, I think it's a lot better than the last one we're coming from, because if you were to miss 3 out of 4, consecutive meetings, and being automatically removed right away, it doesn't say anything really in there about medical or about anything. Just like the one that I have proposed here doesn't say anything about medical, but do we want to be the judge of someone's medical?
Well, I think that's where you're the subject to
No.
language.
I think we can work with some language that accomplishes what we need. One concern I've heard is in some of the staff meetings I've been to, you could have a project that gets approved by default because no action is taken, because we couldn't get a quorum together. And that hasn't happened, but that could happen.
We only dodged that last time because we had an applicant that was amenable to coming to the Planning Commission. And so we do push, and you guys don't see this, but we do push for people to come back to the Planning Commission. If there's even a change between Planning Commission and Council, if there's something small, or if there's something that happens. And sometimes there are changes before it gets to the City Council, small changes and things like that. But if there's any material differences or changes, we're talking to them about going back to the council or going back to the Planning Commission, or if you do continue with the council, we can't tell you how they're going to react to your project. We can't give you any guarantees at that point. And so far, the 2 times we've done it, they've taken our advice and have come back here. The next one is, we have an applicant that you guys denied, I believe, yes, recommended denial for, who now has a change in their application. They're expecting to come back at the next meeting now because we've told them, we want you to go through the Planning Commission. We want to get the comments from the Planning Commission on how they feel about this before the City Council sees this. So, and they were already on the agenda for City Council for the past several months. And so, so far we've just been kind of doing it on we recommend you do this, but.
Was that the ARPA development?
No, this one was 1739 Carrollton, Villa Rica. highway.
The commercial,
That's
single-family
55
attached.
and older
Townhouse.
rentals.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
the
was- that-
developer that's got Hardy Springs.
Yes, that's him.
Yep.
I
That's
thought that
him.
was ARPA.
No, Arpit's, he's Punkintown Road and Dallas Highway,
Right.
61. That part
That's the
61.
big, that's that, I don't know, 50 acres or something.
This is next to the V-Plex.
At South Van Wert in
Oh,
61.
the Highlands.
Yes,
Highlands.
Highlands.
That's
Yep,
right.
Okay.
that's it.
So just for the record, to go back to the other thing, so 3 absences, excused or unexcused, for a year, I think is pretty liberal.
I think
That's
so,
20,
too.
25,
25% of
25,
meetings.
in any place I've ever worked, if you work, I can't do the math real quick. Yeah, I can. 13 weeks off, vacation, right? So I have no problem with that. Again, would say that it shouldn't be mandatory resignation, and I also don't think it should go past the chair. It should go to the chairman and say, yeah, he or she's got to go, or no, this is somebody who's really coming along, this is somebody who's been here for years, or this has been somebody, whatever, and I hear you, I got your concerns, but as chair, I want this person to stay.
And if I just want to address something because it just popped into my mind here. If we do that, and I don't really know because I haven't seen this done before anywhere else where we would basically have a public meeting about a person's tenure on the commission, essentially. Unless we did something, I don't know if we can do like a closed door type of meeting, similar to what the city council does. If we have, because I wouldn't want to drag this in front of this, any of the peers of the commissioners. We are all members of the community, and I wouldn't really want to talk about a commissioner in their absence and in front of the entire city. That's my only concern with that. I think that what you're saying. Definitely, we can definitely look into doing that without a doubt. But I just want you guys to kind of think about how that would work out in practice, because you guys would be in the hot seat essentially and talking about another commissioner, and they're not here, and
I think the chair could just meet with the chair and the council.
the chair meet with the council.
Yeah. It's chairman's call.
I mean,
And
would
nothing with the other commissioners, and nothing with the public.
would something like that constitute an executive session?
Not employees, just kind of quasi-employees. I don't really see it.
I mean, like if when the Development Authority meets on certain matters, an executive session, that's kind of where I was coming from.
Can for discussing real estate acquisitions.
Sure,
things like that. That's
sure.
what we do.
But personnel issues may be a little,
Personnel issues you can, if you're talking.
if we're not personnel. Understand. Thank you.
Yes, we're not.
I'm
I
missing
see
my
nothing
direct
wrong with
deposit.
going back to 3 out of 4.
Going back
Haven't gotten that one yet.
to the training, I think a lot could be done by internal training. I mean, you've got this technical advisory committee, you've got the city engineer, who have all been involved with planning and zoning activities and know what this commission has to deal with. So I think a lot of could be done internally.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Take advantage of the knowledge and the capability and the experience that you already have.
We can organize something.
Yeah.
We will. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And I think, again, something I've been mulling over is maybe there are things that we as commissioners should get together occasionally and talk without an audience or whatever, staff can be involved or whatever. I don't know whether that would be acceptable or not, but there are things that we could talk about, like, what do you think about our asking for more responsibility? What do you think about, whatever? and just have not even a work session.
Just
a-
general discussion.
A discussion.
We have to do it two at a time, or we have to have a work session, right, Mr. Drummond?
Yes.
Or third, you can all still meet and we can still put out a public notice and announce the date and the time, because usually people don't show up unless there's something actually on the agenda itself.
Right.
So, I mean, there's always the possibility someone might come in and stroll in, but once they see there's no one on the agenda, then I can imagine that this would probably be all our room to ourselves at that point. But
Or
we
if
would
it-
still need to televise it.
If it were something, for instance, that I was concerned about, you could publish that we're going to talk about this.
I would personally like to thank John for something that he does regularly. And that is, he gives us a summary of even the city council meeting. And although maybe I've been streaming it the last couple of months because of not being able to get out, and the fact that I've always, for years, coming to the meetings, but I found that even listening to the streaming video, what John does as a summary of it, touches on things that I probably missed, and he's a couple of times made me go back and see what it was that I missed on there. And then he also allows us to make comments. And there are times when I've just replied to him as a comment, and he's responded back and saying yes or no. And so it's been a really great thing, and I really want to thank you, John, for doing that, because I know it takes a lot of time to do that, but it certainly does help me be aware of what was going on that I may have missed.
Thank you. Thank you.
It helps keep you out of trouble.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank everyone here with a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
In the middle of my presentation?
I think it's been, the clock on the wall says we're right at 2 hours.
Okay.
My phone meter is maxed out.
And I apologize,
No
Mr.
worries,
Johnson.
no worries. We'll continue
We will
with
pick
the-
it back up.
Did we do our motion? We did our motion to carry that. Okay, I need to do another motion though, you guys, to carry the rest of these items too, so we don't have to spend all this time noticing them again in the office, if that's okay.
So moved.
Okay.
withdraw my motion to adjourn.
Okay, sorry. So what I'm looking for, can we do all of them at once? All ordinance changes, to the next meeting? It would, yeah, it's items 1 through 4, but also section 8.27 liquor stores. That's that 200-foot on State Highway thing. Yep, there you go. Every item under two, under new B2, under new business would be adjourned to the next meeting,
Okay.
June meeting.
Second.
Yeah, let's just do another vote, just in case. Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
You need to have public comments all over this.
I was about to say that, but,
I forgot.
You need a motion to adjourn?
Motion did. Who was the
yes, I
second?
think we do. I'm sorry, Ron?
Tom was the second?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I can go to the podium and act as a public
We just recognize there's no one here for.
member for a minute.
Yeah,
I move we adjourn.
all right.
Second?
David? Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This might be my first time I maxed out my time at the planning commission. This might be it.
Well,
I did not plan on that. I kid
we'll,
you
we'll
not.
take
you may-
responsibility for that.
Well,
You made the mistake, Ron, of asking for comments after each section. If you wouldn't have done that,
I know, but I was trying to not be interrupted so I can hurry and just breeze